These are the 5 foods that I ate to get absolutely shredded within 90 days and drop 10 pounds of body fat. Now, you could use a similar approach to drop more weight than that if you follow these principles. So before I get into the foods, I want to quickly go through the history of my diet. And this was when this 3 months is actually when I was leading up to a bodybuilding comp. Now, full transparency, I'm not going to make out that I'm out of shape and I struggle to stay lean all year round because fortunately for me, now I'm shredded all year round as a byproduct of health. But my history, it hasn't always been that way, right? I used to struggle with binge eating. I did about 9 bodybuilding comps altogether. And I went through a period of time where I was really struggling with my relationship with food. I would eat like an asshole every weekend. I was eating too many foods, UPF, ultra processed foods, which were causing me to eat more. My appetite was through the roof, and I would restrict in the week and then have what I call a symptom eruption on the weekends and overeat and eat like an asshole. So I actually subscribed for a while there. This is full transparency to the If It Fits Your Macros tribe. If you don't know what that is, there was almost a wave, a movement, if you like, where people were following, focusing on calories and macros, and it doesn't matter what you eat as long as it fits your macros, right? IIFYM, it was called If It Fits Your Macros. I subscribed that for a little bit there. And that was when I had my worst relationship with food because it bought into what I wanted, which is my addiction to food. This is full transparency. So, okay, let me track my calories and macros and hit my calories, and then I can eat what I want. And guess what? It didn't work for me, right? I didn't stick to my calories and macros because those foods, like the pizza, like the Domino's pizza, the Ben and Jerry's, the Domino's cookies that I would binge eat on the weekends, and more things as well, Krispy Kreme donuts, you name it, all the quote unquote worst types of foods. I don't want to say bad food, but let's be honest, they're not good for you. They're unhealthy and they're designed to make you overeat. So I was in the worst shape I've been in, to be honest, for that 2 years. And then I had to really eat more whole foods and get to a point where being lean was the byproduct of the foods I was eating, the way I was living. So, as I say, I prepped for the stage when I dropped this 10 pounds. I'm going to share the 5 foods I ate. And I got absolutely shredded. And that's because these foods, I just want to be clear here, they kept me satiated, right? They kept me satiated. I felt satisfied and I still had some flexibility on the weekends. So let's get stuck in. So the first thing was steak, good old steak. Now, what I would say is I would actually focus now, if I was doing the same thing now, I would actually eat more ground beef than I would steak. Why? Because it's easier to prep. And when you prep it, it still tastes good generally. If you leave it in the fridge and you have it, or if you heat it up or whatever, it tastes better than steak. Steak, I'm in a fortunate position where I can cook that from home. And I did when I got shredded and I dropped that 10 pounds of fat in 3 months. I actually could go home. I used to PT clients in person at that point in time. So I would go home, chuck a steak on, and I would have that most days, to be honest. And I really enjoyed it, right? You never get bored of steak. Ground beef is more convenient. Like I say, what I would do now is I would just chuck a bunch of ground beef on. It's easier to prep. Like I say, it tastes better when you leave it and when you kind of take it with you. If I was on the move, that's what I would have because it's way more enjoyable and you're more likely to stick to eating that, in my opinion, than you are having steak, which is pre-made, right? But going back to that, that's what I would do now. So ground beef or beef mince. But steak never fails. If you're someone who works from home and you're in a position where you can buy steak, let's be honest, it's not cheap. But if you get it in bulk, then it works out a lot more feasible. I'll get, a bunch from the butchers and it actually works out quite cheap. And I would fry that in a little bit of ghee oil, always hit the spot. Never got bored of it. I still don't get bored of the steak. I don't get bored of ground beef and beef mince, to be honest. So that was my go-to. And then obviously, as everyone knows, you're going to get most of the essential nutrients you need. And, vitamins, minerals, essential fats, essential proteins. Obviously, you could just eat steak for the rest of your life and not get a nutrient deficiency. Grass-fed, though, this is really important. Grass-fed versus grain-fed. People always talk about the nutritional differences. For example, omega-3, generally you're going to get more omega-3 in grass-fed, grass-finished steak and beef mince or ground beef as opposed to grain-fed, right? You're going to get way more omega-3s versus omega-6. Now, most people have too versus too much omega-6s versus omega-3s. But if you have grass-fed, you're going to get more omega-3s, right? You want a better balance of omega-3s versus omega-6s. And also you're going to get more CLAs, stearic acid, those kind of things. But the main thing is that it's less calories as well as a bonus. If you're looking to lose fat for that reason, people don't talk about this. Grass-fed beef has less calories, way less calories, and actually way more protein per calorie, right? So I'm not going to give you numbers. I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but If you eat grass fed, you're going to eat less calories. Grain fed has way more calories. Oh, it's going to have generally as well, grain fed. The reason why it's got more calories is going to have more fat. The cow who is grain fed is going to have more intramuscular fat. So they're gonna obviously the fat is where the calories are at, right? So, but yeah, obviously that's what you want to focus on: grass-fed ground beef or steak. Not saying that's going to work for you, but that works for me, especially ground beef and clients when it comes to convenience, when it comes to them having meals they enjoy and having complete meals. In other words, meals which are full of minerals, protein, and fats. And yeah, that was my go-to. Number two is chicken, right? Or chicken thighs. Now, chicken thighs is my favorite. That's one I never get bored of. Chicken breast, personally, I get really bored of. They're dry, they're not as enjoyable to eat. The trade-off is obviously chicken thighs does have more calories, but it depends on where your metabolism is at, how many calories you need to eat to lose fat. For me, thighs were way better. I enjoyed them more. Again, more fat on them, more calories, but they tasted amazing. I still don't get bored of chicken thighs to this day. They taste absolutely phenomenal for me every time. You can chuck them in the air fryer and just press the button and leave them on. Absolutely phenomenal. Chicken breasts are obviously going to have way less calories. So depending on how many calories you can eat, you might want to switch it up between the two. Chicken thighs more enjoyable, great, but they're going to have more calories. Like I say, chicken breast, less calories, leaner, not as enjoyable in my opinion, but perhaps you could mix up the two if you're looking to lose weight. And also with chicken as well, particularly chicken breast is super high protein, super low calories. So you can hit a high protein target and keep your calories down, which then would leave more wiggle room for other foods you might want to fit into your calories to lose that weight, right? Because let's be honest, you're not going to be eating chicken, steak, vegetables every single meal. You're going to have a little bit of flexibility there and perhaps eat some of your favorite foods on the weekends here and there, obviously within reason. So then chicken breast enables you to do that because, again, high protein, low calories. Chicken thighs, less wiggle room, right? You're getting the protein and you're also getting a good amount of fat and calories. So then that would leave, if you're just eating chicken thighs like I was to get shredded and to lose that 10 pounds, then you are going to be having less room to eat some of the other food, right? So chicken thighs are my go-to. Eggs. Now, number one, people always talk about eggs. The only thing they think of is protein, cholesterol, right? When they think of eggs. Whereas an egg is a nutrient powerhouse. And an egg yolk within itself is the perfect multivitamin, contains all the vitamins and minerals you need, pretty much, and a good balance of omega-3s as well, a little bit of omega-3s, certain saturated fats, and also with the absorption of protein. Now, an egg has a really high biological value. In other words, your body absorbs the proteins, the amino acids, better. It has a high amount of leucine as well. Just like chicken and meat, it has a high amount of leucine. Now, leucine is a type of amino acid or protein, to simplify it, which is the most important one for muscle protein synthesis and lots of other health benefits. So for building muscle, you need to have enough leucine, right? And eggs contain a decent amount of leucine. But more importantly, they taste great, in my opinion. I would fry them in a bit of ghee oil. Again, you've got to look at how many calories you need to eat to lose the weight, right? Ghee oil is going to have calories in. You need to factor all these oils in. If you're not tracking, then you can't just add a bunch of ghee oil and eggs together, loads of full fat beef mince and all these kind of things, and just guess your way to losing 30 pounds or whatever you want to lose, right? You've got to track these things and measure these things and be aware of them. But eggs in ghee oil, oh my God, or even butter, taste absolutely phenomenal. And they always work for me. So eggs and also cholesterol as well. This is something that's almost controversial. Cholesterol acts as a steroid hormone in the body. It's an essential nutrient. Cholesterol has a bad rep. It's an essential nutrient. Our body and brain is built up of cholesterol, right? So what I do strategically, if I'm looking to get stronger and build muscle and feel good, right? Even sex drive goes up, your libido goes up because it acts as a steroid hormone. It's going to increase hormones like testosterone, right? So what I'll do intentionally is I will actually add more cholesterol. So I'll add more egg yolks. I'll add more things like chicken livers, beef livers. Chicken livers taste better than beef liver. I like both, but most people prefer chicken liver. They taste way better. Intentionally to actually increase that cholesterol, to increase my strength. You should try it. You should try cycling cholesterol. Try it for even a week. Try and eat more egg yolks or eggs in general, more chicken livers, more beef livers, and you'll notice an increase in strength, recovery. You'll probably even notice your libido going up, right? So that's something I did intentionally leading up to that show because I know I will be getting shredded and I want as much testosterone boosting foods as I can. And if it's going to act as a steroid hormone, I'll take it, especially when I'm getting on stage. So yeah, that's another little gem there with eggs, egg yolks in particular. Another thing as well is egg whites, right? If you want to get protein up and keep calories down, then egg whites are just pure protein, low calories, right? Whereas an egg yolk is going to have more calories, but that's where the nutrients are. That's where most of the nutrients are in the yolk. So don't take away the yolks. Yeah, sure. If you're having low calories, have the whites mainly, but also have egg yolks as well, right? So if that makes sense, for example, you could have like 3 whole eggs and then maybe, the equivalent of like 4 egg yolks, egg whites. Depends on how you want to bank calories up to save for some other food, right? Because you've got to have flexibility, which I'll get to. Number 4 was sweet potato, sweet or white potato. They both contain different nutrients, but a similar amount in terms of the balance. You're going to get a similar amount of, you're going to get the same amount of nutrition, just different types when you have both of those foods. Like sweet potato is going to have more vitamin A, for example, right? I prefer the taste of sweet potato. This is really important. You've got to look at what you enjoy eating, right? That's what people miss when they're looking to lose weight. For me, it's like I want to enjoy every single meal I have. I don't know about you. There's no meal that I have that I didn't enjoy, even leading up to the bodybuilding comp up until about a week or two out, but that's another conversation. So potato. Now, I know a lot of you listen through the carnivore space, and certain people, they might have digestive issues with potato and stuff, right? But most people don't. And something that I've kind of come to realize more recently than anything else is when you're in a surplus of calories, when you're eating more calories than you need, lots of foods become more problematic. Potato can be harder to digest. Saturated fats can be harder to digest. Fiber, lots of different foods when you're not in a calorie deficit, when you're in maintenance or especially a surplus, it's more stress on the digestive system, which means you've got less space for error, right? And those foods become more problematic in conjunction with you eating more food, right? So bear that in mind as well. Whenever I'm in a deficit, I have way less issues eating things like vegetables and potatoes. But when I eat loads of those foods in conjunction with maybe a calorie surplus, if I'm looking to build muscle or even sometimes just staying in maintenance calories, I find those foods harder to digest. So bear that in mind. So I was eating loads of sweet potato. Yes, out of all vegetables, potato is pretty much the highest calorie vegetable, but it's still super low in calories in comparison to loads of other foods, high in fiber. And you can have loads on your plate. It'll slow down the rate of digestion as well and the time it takes for you to eat your meal. This is another thing people overlook with things like sweet potato is it takes a bit longer to eat your meal. If you just have a meat on your plate, you can eat the meal quicker, which therefore means you don't get the signal to tell you you're full. The signal sent to your gut quick enough. Whereas when you're eating things like vegetables or potatoes, it'll take a little bit longer to eat that meal, which then increases satiety as well. So that was my best friend. I would have sweet potato twice a day. And if you're in a calorie deficit, there's nothing wrong with having potato once, twice a day and loading up on that, depending on your body type and where you're at. But a lot of people say, oh, I gain weight when I eat carbs. You don't. You gain weight when you eat more calories. You can't argue with me on that. If you say I eat carbs and I gain more weight, you're not eating the right type of carbs. You're going to be eating refined sugars, processed types of carbs, and that's another conversation. But potatoes are great. They taste amazing. Chuck them in the oven. I used to chop them up, bake them in the oven, add a little bit of olive oil and salt. Obviously, again, olive oil is loaded with calories. Another disclaimer, I was tracking my calories meticulously when I lost this weight. So yeah, loads of sweet potato with most of my meals, hit the spot every single time, always felt satiated after eating them. And it added to the satiety because of the fiber as well, on top of the high protein. So when I'm eating my meat, my beef mince or my steak or my chicken thighs and potato, yes, the protein's filling me up, but also the fiber is adding to that thermic effect of food, right? So protein and fiber, they're two things people need to chase when they're looking to lose weight. Yes, some people struggle having too much fiber, so there's a threshold and there's lots of variance there. But all in all, if you eat protein and fiber from single ingredient foods, in other words, meats, eggs, fish, vegetables, fruits, it's hard to go wrong. The next food, this is going to be controversial because I know a lot of you follow me for the carnivore space, is vegetables, right? I don't eat vegetables right now, but if I was looking to get shredded, you can bet your cotton socks I'd be eating more vegetables. Actually, I've just started bringing in more pumpkin and sweet potato, actually. But that's another conversation, right? Cabbage I would have. I used to love cabbage and I still do now. I just don't eat a lot of it now because it gives me gut issues and high sulfuric vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower. I was eating loads of those as well when I lost this 10 pounds of fat and got shredded for the stage. Sauerkraut, I still eat a lot of that now. Fermented vegetables like fermented cabbage, like sauerkraut or kimchi. That's great because it tastes amazing in my opinion and really, really good for the gut. So what I would do is I would chuck these vegetables either A on the pan. If I wanted it crispy, I would chuck cabbage on the pan, right? In ghee oil again, or maybe even a bit of olive oil, or B, I would just chuck them in the air fryer or in the oven and they would taste phenomenal then because they're more kind of crispy and stuff. And I would just load my plate up with broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage. A lot of people don't like these foods. I personally am a weird person. I love vegetables. I don't eat them now, like I say, because you don't necessarily need them to thrive, vegetables, but they can really help when it comes to weight loss, right? As long as you cook them properly. So you cook out a lot of defense chemicals. They high volume, low calories, and in conjunction with meat on your plate and even potatoes, which is a vegetable, of course, but that's a root vegetable. It's going to help keep you satiated. And again, it's slow. People don't talk about this enough. This is why, ultra processed foods are such a problem because you eat them fast. So you eat, I think, what is it per minute? I'm sure it's like 16 calories more per minute on average when you're eating UPF versus whole foods. You add that up, and that's a lot more calories. You're eating way faster, which means, the quicker you eat, the more you eat, essentially. The slower you eat, the more time you take to chew your food, the more mindful you are when you're eating. For example, you're eating a plate full of meat and vegetables is generally going to take you longer. You have to chew it more. And then on top of that, if you're avoiding distractions like watching TV or scrolling on your phone, maybe listen to a podcast or audible book like I do, like I always do when I'm eating, then you're going to feel more satiated, right? Remember, it takes a good 15, 20 minutes for the signal to be sent to your gut from your brain to tell you you're full, right? So vegetables are going to add to that. And that's that. That's it in a nutshell. They're the 5 foods I ate to get absolutely shredded. Now, another thing I did as well, and before I get to this as well, if you want to know what foods you need to eat to get shredded, because this is different for everyone, specifically what you need to eat, literally what to eat to get shredded, lose fat fast, lose it in a sustainable way, and also understand what you need to do to hit your goal, whether that be fat loss, build a muscle, or both, and optimize your metabolic health. I am actually giving away a few more free metabolic assessments, right? So what do you got to do to get your free metabolic score and get exactly a game plan in terms of a meal plan, what foods you need to eat for your metabolic type and for your goal? Click the link beneath this in the show notes and I will give you your score and game plan. Excuse the digestion there. Anyway, another strategy I'd like to talk about here, which is very important, is I would bank my calories up strategically for the weekend, right? So what I would do is I would cut back a bit in the week. So I would make sure that I'm in a bit of a deficit in the week, right? So let's say my maintenance calories were, let's say my deficit I'm just going to say for you, right? For a round number, let's say you're to lose weight, 2,000 calories, right? Let's just round it off today. You need to eat to lose weight, right? Then always look at it over the space of a week, right? And this is what I do with clients as well. It's like, right, 2,000 calories is your target, roughly. I always give it a 100 calorie wiggle room as well, or even 200 sometimes. But I always say, right, let's aim for, 2,000 to 2,100 calories, right, a day on average. So over a week, that's going to be what? Around about 14,000 calories, right? Over a week. So that's the way I always look at it if I'm looking to get shredded. And what I did that time, and like I do every time if I'm looking to get really shredded or drop body fat, is bank calories up for the weekend and balance it out over the week. For example, your calories are 2,000 for you to lose weight, right? Then in the week, I would normally have a few days then where I was eating. Let me just say where I was at, right? So it was 3,000 calories for me, right? To be in a deficit. I know I'm fortunate, right? So what I would then do is I would have a few days in the week where I would have 2,500 calories. So that, let's say I had 2 days even, right? I think I at one point I was doing like 3 days a week where I would have about 2,500 calories. So that would then bank up a total of 1,500 extra calories for me to eat on the weekend, right? So then you got to enjoy your food. I'm the same as everyone else. I'm not different to anyone else, right? I enjoy my food and I want to enjoy food on the weekends sometimes. And my girlfriend and I will sit down, we'll eat some food, we'll, eat more calories, add some peanut butter in or whatever we want to do. So we can do that together and, have a bit of wiggle room, right? So I would do 3 days, 1,500 calories extra for the weekend, right? And then that would mean then on the weekends, what I would do is I would add in foods, which I wouldn't always recommend this now because it is classed as ultra processed foods, but I would add in foods like Halo Top, right? which is like an ice cream, which is low in. I don't recommend low calorie foods. I don't recommend people doing this, but it worked for me and it served the purpose. But I, to be honest, am more disciplined than most, where I can switch it off after the weekend and get back to it, especially when I was doing a comp. I don't eat these foods now. Full transparency. Now I'll just eat whole foods, right? So I will add some peanut butter. I'll eat some Greek yogurts. I'll eat a load of fruit, honey, peanut butter, Greek yogurt. So it's all whole foods. I wouldn't be having things like Halo Top where it's a low calorie ice cream, right? So I would eat basically a whole tub of that, right? So I would eat a whole tub of Halo Top. Again, wouldn't recommend this necessarily, which is classed as an ultra processed food, but it was low calories, high in protein on the weekends. I would eat some protein bars, like 1 or 2 protein bars on the weekend. Then I would have coconut yogurt, which is loaded with calories, by the way, disclaimer, and a load of fruit. And I would eat all that together on the weekends and have that and have that 1,500 calories that I banked up throughout the week. And I've sometimes, I would have almond butter and dark chocolate as well, which are calorie dense. I would even have some dark chocolate, to be honest, through the week, just a little bit. And I would eat more of those foods on the weekend. That's what I enjoyed eating. And then I could still stay in a deficit and do that. So you've got to have that flexibility, right? And you've got to look at on the weekends, right? Okay, if I'm going to have a social event, for example, like you will have, whilst trying to lose your 10, 20, 30 pounds, then you've got to plan ahead for that. You've got to pre-plan. I was just talking to a client earlier. I'm going to give you an example. He had a date on Friday, right? And then he had another event on the Saturday. He's actually a DJ on top of his full-time work. So he went to an event and he planned ahead of that, right? So he doesn't drink much, but he did have a few drinks on the date and he planned ahead and he hit his protein throughout the day. Then on the Saturday, he made sure he ate 100 grams of protein before he went out and met friends because he knew it'd be harder to eat protein before a DJ event. He knew it'd be harder to eat. He had 150 grams of protein he had to hit. So he hit 100 grams before he went to that meal. So then he knew he only had to get 50 grams in on that meal to hit his target, right? So it's pre-planning, planning ahead. And that's what people get wrong. They look at, right, I'm going to lose weight, and they separate that from their lifestyle. They look at health and fitness, and then, okay, there's my life over there. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to eat these calories. I'm going to lose this weight, not thinking that life is going to get in the way at times. Sure, you have to say no to certain events, but you still have to plan ahead and you have to hit targets and then give yourself a bit of wiggle room for the social events, sometimes for if you want to eat a bit of pizza and have some wine with your partner or whatever on the weekends, fantastic. But plan ahead for that. Bank your calories up, hit your protein target so you don't eat like an asshole, and stick to those fundamentals. All right, ladies and gents, going to wrap it up here. If you like this video, please like right underneath. It makes a massive difference. Comment below with your feedback on YouTube. I'd love to hear it, or on Spotify. And also click the link beneath in the show notes. And I'm going to pin this to the page as well. If you want to get your free metabolic assessment, you want to know what foods to eat, what meals you need to eat, and exactly what you need to do to get the results you want, click the link below and apply, fill out the metabolic assessment form. Over and out.